Hi, thanks for joining us. We are Nathaniel and Amy White with the Homemade Family. Just a reminder that you can catch all of our podcasts and episodes on YouTube. Search the Homemade Family, Nathaniel and Amy White, or on our website, www.thehomemadefamily.com, or anywhere and anywhere podcasts are found. Just search for Insight Now, the Homemade Family. And we are excited to be talking about chores today.
Woohoo!
Woo! We'll jump in here in just a second, but I do want to invite you to feel free to put in some notes or comments, questions. Just join with us as we travel down this road. So I had made a couple of Instagram posts and Facebook posts about having my children do chores, and I was surprised by the incredibly strong reactions that those posts received. Some people were saying that we were abusing our children, that this is violating child labor laws, and things like that. And even just friends who are like violently opposed to having kids do chores, which was a complete surprise to me because, you always just think that people are the way that you are, or that they think the way that you think. And that is not the case, especially in the area of chores. So I did say this was a hot topic because apparently people feel very passionately about it, including us. And so I began to put together notes about why we do chores in our family and the incredible value that they bring. So if you are against chores, please listen in with us because I think that it might give you a new perspective. And if you already are like, yes, we do chores, just back. I was like, oh, please don't. Our internet in town, I think, has just been really weak lately, and I don't know why. So sorry about that. But remembering where I was, if you are totally for chores, hopefully you guys can learn a few more things along the way. And I had 9 points. And as Nathaniel and I began to put things on paper, we got through point number 1 today. So I invite you personally to come back here and check out the next probably 2 weeks. We'll do some more on chores. And today we're not going to get to the real practical things. It'll be more philosophy of chores. But we will at some point.
And in the philosophy of chores, why it's so beneficial. What really is the value that you are giving your kids by assigning chores?
And value for yourself.
And
too.
Value for yourself too.
So with that, I think I lost track of where I was going to go next, but that's okay. So we're going to just jump in talking about chores. Oh, I was talking about in a future episode, we will go really practical and just talk about age appropriate chores and different methods of paying and not paying and why you would or wouldn't pay. So, but today we're going to jump in, Nathaniel, with point number 1, why we do chores. Why my kids do chores. Yeah. I do chores too, but my kids.
Right. Obviously we do chores too. So Amy tells this kind of funny story about, she always thought that her parents, growing up, she always thought her parents had kids so that they would do all the work at home.
I thought the reason my parents had me was to make me clean the house for them.
And I think that that's kind of a common perception for us as kids. If you grew up doing chores, you're like, why do I have to do all the work around this house? And we have just no idea, no perspective for how much work our parents are doing or any of those kinds of things. Or even of the fact that most of the mess around the house is there because we put it there. And it wasn't actually our parents' fault making that mess. Usually, I think in many of our homes, that was the case. And I know for me growing up, most of my chore doing was through gritted teeth with grumbling and complaining. And it was not a case of like, oh, I'm humbly submitting to the wisdom of my parents and understanding that they know better than me. And it was very much just, this is getting in the way of the things that I want to do. And had no understanding of the value that they were giving me in assigning chores to me. But we're just going to, I think, just jump really right in. I guess I'm trying to find a way to kind of ease into point number 1. But really the bottom line is one of the very first and most important things that we give our kids and teaching our kids by giving them chores is just simply personal responsibility. And I can't state how important this is. I can't say it enough how important it is to teach our kids personal responsibility. I'll say that again, personal responsibility. And the reason that this is so important is because it doesn't matter whether your child is an employee or becomes an employer. It doesn't matter if they rent an apartment or if they own a home. It doesn't matter if they grow up to be a husband, a wife, a mother, a father, or even if they just stay single all the days of their life. They have to, if they learn personal responsibility, it will benefit them. Period. If they learn personal responsibility, it will benefit them. And not just them, but anybody who has to work with them, anybody who has to lead them, anybody who has to be on a team with them, anybody who is in their context in any way, shape, or form will benefit from your kids learning personal responsibility. And chores are an awesome way to teach them that value and that lesson.
Starting in the toddler years.
Right.
We start with, if you make a mess, you clean up the mess. Now, this sounds like pretty common sense. And, like you make a mess, you clean up the mess. We have to do that too. But what this can translate into is, if you make a mess relationally, you need to clean that mess up relationally. And it translates into a bigger thing than just the item that they are cleaning up.
Right. But it can start with Duplo blocks or the clothes on the floor. We talked a few weeks ago about, I forget the context of boundaries or whatever, but just, hey, the kids are changing clothes 8 times a day or whatever, and they're just leaving all these clothes on their floor. And well, first of all, we can have them clean up their own clothes. This is not something that is heavy labor. This is not something that's abusively hard or laborious or straining mentally, physically, emotionally, any of those things. That they fully demonstrated their capability to move clothes around by getting them out of the drawers, and it didn't tax them at all. We know this because they kept doing it over and over again. Same thing. If they can dump the Legos out, they are able to put the Legos back. This is not physically taxing to them. This is not complicated. This is not mentally stressful. You are not abusing your children by having them undo what they did. Right?
Yep, very much so.
So anyway, I think I'd like to think that that's fairly self-evident, but if you make the mess, you clean it up. That can start, like we said, that can start with the really simple, lightweight things, but it can grow to, hey, you got the shirt dirty. Now you're going to learn to do your own laundry. You need to make this. You want to eat a meal. You also need to cook this meal. You want to cook a meal so you can eat it. So you need to also learn to plan a grocery list and learn how to go shopping. All of these things, it can scale up into adult-sized responsibilities, but it can start with these little micro lessons that are age appropriate, and then it can keep growing from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of our parenting philosophies, and probably this is why we love chores so much, is that if we want to see it in adulthood, then we want to begin training it in our kids when they're small. If it's not good in adulthood, like hitting and stealing and things like that, then that training has to happen when they're little. And so learning that we have responsibility, that if we make a mess, we clean up the mess, that actually starts when they're very young, so that when they are adults, it just comes natural to them. And again, I want to go back to this other point where doing a physical act of cleaning up your mess is one thing. But then we train this in our kids too, that when they make an emotional mess, they need to clean that up as well. When you make a relational mess with a sibling, breaking trust or hurting them or something else, then we go back and clean up that mess in the same way that if we dump the Legos all over, we need to clean up that mess too. Like we just make sure that we're cleaning up the messes that we make in our lives.
And we talked about this fairly extensively in our couple of week series on training versus raising, which this does connect to. But how part of training our kids starts with training ourselves. And this is a great place for us to demonstrate that as we make messes, because none of us are perfect parents, we're going to make messes in our kids' lives. Just demonstrate what this looks like. You go to your kids, you say, hey, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have handled that the way that I did. That wasn't okay for me to do. Please forgive me. And man, those apologies and that humility, you'll be amazed to watch the life that it brings into your kids' lives and into your relationship with them. And then once you demonstrate that, it's a lot easier to call them to do the same thing that you're also doing. Mm-hmm. So these are just some of the basic, we're going through just some basic levels of personal responsibility. First, like if you make the mess, you clean it up. But also, what about if this belongs to you, you take good care of it? Man, I remember we got these really amazing books that I was so excited to read to our kids, and they were over the heads. They were beyond the level of where our kids were at when they were little. And one day I left one of these kids on my desk, which happened to be one of these books on the desk. I left one of these books on my desk, which happened to be in the same bedroom as our daughter's crib when she was just like little kid. And I was very saddened and disappointed to go into her room later on after her nap time to discover that the book had been left within arm's reach of her. And it did not, I think she thankfully did not tear out anything that actually had content. It was just some of like the extra pages, like copyright page or something like that in the very beginning of it. But, there are certain, at that age, she was not able to understand what it meant to take good care of her stuff. You know what I mean? But as she grew older, we're able to talk about, how do you take care of a book properly? How do you take care of these things properly? There was a very long season of our lives where it was very agonizing in some ways for us as parents, where scripture says fathers don't exasperate your children, but like we really wish that it would say children don't exasperate your parents sometimes. It was one of those exasperating seasons where the kids just refused to take their shoes off and leave them by the door when we'd come home from someplace. They'd wander off and their jackets trailed off, and then there's a shoe, and then there's maybe another shoe, and then we'd be trying to leave somewhere. And remember, we had 5 kids, 5 and under, and inevitably there was a shoe missing, at least one shoe missing anytime we wanted to go anywhere. Just taking basic good care of your stuff at young ages can look like leave your shoes by the door. You take them off, you leave them there. They're there when you want them. But obviously, as you grow older, it just looks like, hey, we've got 4 boys. We don't wrestle in the living room. Why? Because we want our couches to last, because we don't want somebody to crash into the TV, because we value our windows in one piece. Why do we? So, okay, it doesn't mean no wrestling. It just means go do it this other place. Go do it outside or in the basement that's unfinished and less damageable. We equip with this mindset, this value that we take care of our stuff.
This actually is a great opportunity to teach them biblical principles also of taking care of their own things.
Yeah.
Because God says when you're faithful in the little, he'll give you more. And so as we train our children to take care of their own things and to take care of them faithfully, they actually earn more trust, more responsibility, and more things, which we know that kids love things. And so we talk to them about this when they're little, like, I have one kid who really his love language is gifts, and he always wants more stuff. And we're like, but hey, if you're not taking care of the things that you already have by evidence that they're all over the house and some are getting dirty and not taken care of, then you can't have more things. And so it feels like a chore to clean up your room, but really this is a principle of godliness and kingdom, that you take care of what you already have. And as you're faithful with those things, that earns to be able to have more of those things. And also, this is just a basic stewardship principle too, that the Lord calls us to take care of the things that are ours and to be faithful with what he's given us. And these chores are an excellent opportunity to have that kind of giving them the kingdom principles and tools. Now, you guys, kids aren't just going to automatically draw these parallels themselves. Right. So as you do chores with your kids, or as you have kids do the chores, talk to them about how this is actually God's design for them, that we keep the garden and tend the garden, and then we expand the garden. That's or right. How they're faithful with little, they will be given more.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about that. Like this is literally the first principle God gave Adam and Eve in the garden. He's like, and he took the man and he put the man and his wife in the garden, and he told them, cultivate and keep the garden. And he said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. And these were the only instructions they had, were take care of this enclosed, protected, cultivated place, keep it, tend it, and cause that cultivated place to grow. And this is just basic, the most core principle of what it means to be created in the image of God, to be on an assignment in this earth from the Lord, is that we take care of our stuff, we cultivate, we keep, we grow, we expand. And just that they're going to need that anywhere they go. If they're an employee, that's going to make them employee of the year every year. Just steward what's yours, be faithful with it. As a father, as a mother, same thing. I mean, again, these apply everywhere. But chores are just the tool to equip the value. I hope you're seeing this, that this isn't just about, oh, you got a to-do list and it needs done, and you're going to recruit your kids as slave labor to get a job done. That's not the point. That's not the heart. That's not the purpose of any of these things. It isn't just about, yes, the job needs done. And we do have a point somewhere in our 9 points that's like, well, the job needs done. Why not them?
Yeah, that's good.
But it really is much more about the values you can teach through the chores.
Yes. Another value that we can teach through the chores is taking care of other people's things.
Right.
And that the Bible says, like, if you're not faithful with what belongs to another, who will give you something of your own? And
Jesus said that.
Jesus himself said that.
Ouch.
Right. And so this is a great, again, tool of training. Chores are a great tool of training for teaching kingdom principles. And so if a child is like, why do I have to feed the dog or, get the sauces out on the table because other people are going to use them, not just me? Well, when you're faithful with taking care of other people's things and it's seen that you do it faithfully, then the Lord will promote you with giving you more. Again, it's just kind of that same principle. But this principle then also applies further out in the circles of life. We try to model this with our kids. If we walk into a public bathroom and there's like water all over the sink, we just grab a couple extra paper towels and we dry it up and we throw it away. And we always make sure to comment that, like this, this isn't my mess, but we leave a place better than we found it. These are character things. These are integrity things that are trained through doing chores at home.
Yeah. We take our camper out and we're in a campsite and we find the previous camper's garbage here and there, a wrapper here and there, whatever, nothing major. But we don't leave it there. We pick it up. We leave it better than we found it. It's just, this is a principle of life. We improve everywhere we go. Why
Yes.
not? Why not improve everywhere you go? You have the ability to make a difference everywhere you go. And a lot of times it doesn't take much. It's not like you got to change the world everywhere you go. You just improve everywhere you go. And you can do that by chores, by serving, by whatever. But it starts with having a heart to value that, and a set of eyes that'll actually see ways to engage in a way that does it. So
I kind of jumped that, but why don't you talk a little bit about here, and then I'll share that.
Sure. So this is Amy kind of mentioned this earlier, but our parenting philosophy is that we're training for adulthood. We're not just raising kids to adulthood. This is review from what we've been saying in past weeks, but I'll keep saying it again to help ingrain it, and for people who maybe didn't hear it before. But we're not just aiming to raise kids to the point of being alive and healthy once they reach adulthood. What we're aiming for is capable, skilled, responsible, godly, mature, and confident adults. and that is going to require a lot more input into their lives. It's not just shepherding things around them and wrapping them in bubble wrap and making sure they stay alive and safe and healthy, but it's going to actually take equipping and training and conversations and those kinds of things.
Yeah, and when kids start doing chores at a young age, they learn skills that are valuable for life. In fact, when people were telling me that it was child abuse to require my children to vacuum under the kitchen table where they dropped all the crumbs, or to scrub the toilet, or beside the toilet where the boys had peed over the edge, they made the mess. They should help clean it up, right? I actually feel exactly the opposite, because I think that by denying them the skills of cleaning and taking care of something, that you're sending them off into adulthood in ignorance, and it actually makes kids feel insecure. It's amazing the confidence that our kids have. If I'm like, hey, I'm going to go, but you guys need to do this, this, and this while I'm gone, they have the skills and they have the confidence to go ahead and carry those things out, because they've been trained and they know how the house operates and what things need to happen. And they're actually already really competent at running the home. Yeah. We want our kids to be confident when they go out in public places. I have a 13-year-old daughter. She loves to shop with me. And so while we're shopping, I will often have her ring the groceries, put the credit card in, put the passcode in, and then get the receipt and do the bagging, because this creates confidence. And then I can, next time we'd pull up to the store and I'm like, hey, would you run in and just grab one loaf of bread? And she grabs the card and she can go do that, because she's now confident and has the skills, where her little bit older brother rarely goes shopping with me. He has a little bit different personality. And so if I ask the same of him, he's like, I don't know if I can handle that. And I'm like, you can't buy a loaf of bread yet? You know, that's on me that I haven't trained and given him the skills, because in a few years, he's going to actually have to know how to pump and pay for the gas. And he's going to have to know how to, get things on the way home for mom when he's a driver, in just 2 years. And so I can see that he lacks the confidence, because I haven't trained in those skills, where if I would train in these skills, he would have the confidence to do those things too.
And I just want to say, like, our kids are not going to magically discover personal responsibility when they become adults. I say this clearly. If you clean everything for them now, they will not know how to clean when they have a home of their own or an apartment of their own. And when you go over to visit them, do not be surprised that it is an absolute mess and a wreck. Why? Because they don't have the knowledge and or the skills to do those jobs. Or if you cook everything for them now, they will not know how to make food for themselves. We know people who, like, okay, hey, does your mom, what does your mom make for you? Well, if she's the one who cooks, she'll make macaroni and cheese or hot dogs or pizza. Like,
no diss on her. She probably just hasn't
probably
been
just
trained.
never got trained. Exactly. Like, and I think that that's probably really, really, really common. In fact, I've heard from people who work with folks who live in lower income situations that one of the most practical, beneficial ministries and services to lower income groups of people is just simply, how do you cook a meal? How do you plan a menu? How do you budget for a week's worth of groceries? How do you go shopping for those groceries? How do you figure out what ingredients do these recipes need? How do I follow a recipe? All of those kinds of things. Those are all skills that actually are necessary and important in life, especially when you start thinking about the contrast between what goes into packaged foods versus actual homemade meals and how much healthier one is than the other. And all of these kinds of things, we can actually set our kids up for healthier living, more financially stable living, more independent living, like just so many benefits if we utilize the time that we have with them at home, the years we have with them under our roof, and we train, we educate, we equip, we raise, we teach, we do alongside all of these things that help our kids be prepared for adulthood. They're not just going to magically become skilled in these things. They have to have time to learn and to practice and grow.
Yeah. So I think we're just going to wrap up with this point, which is knowledge versus skills, or knowledge and skills. And even as Nathaniel's talking about the food thing, that's just a great place to go into it. But as a mama, I had 5 kids in 5 years, and I would do all the work for the kids because I just didn't have time to train them in the skills of like finding and putting on your shoes or getting your socks on. Like, I was like, I could just line them up, get it all done, move on, you know, or they were so little that I was always managing the kids and not actually training them in the skills necessary to pick up their own toys or to help with any of the chores. And so by the time my kids got a little bit older, I realized like my kids, like we were so busy just surviving that we didn't actually train our kids any chores or skills. And so we took 1 month off of homeschool just to learn household skills, like how do you pick up your toys? How do you load a dishwasher? How do you clean up your bedroom? But there's this thing between knowledge and skills. And especially when we talk about food, like we need to teach our kids the knowledge of healthy eating, like, you know, chicken and beef versus, you know, home cooked meals versus just French fries and hot dogs all the time. There's a knowledge that comes with that, but there's also a skill like how do you actually prepare that food? You know, our kids can have a knowledge that they, like speaking of toddler years, a knowledge that they should pick up the toys, but it's going to take a little bit of time for them to learn the skill of, I pick up this piece, I take it over to this bucket, and I put it in that bucket. Now that seems like so simple and easy, but it's a skill that's learned over time. And when kids are little,
animals with the animals, I put the trains with the trains, I put the blocks with the blocks.
Yeah. And when our kids are little, it can feel like, you know what? I just want to do it myself because I get it done faster. And sometimes I have to clean up after they've cleaned because they just don't do a good enough job of it, which I will admit that I still do, especially in the bathrooms. And Nathaniel's like, call them back and make them do it again. And I'm like, oh, it's just easier if I just do it myself. Like, so I'm guilty of this. But there's a training of skills that when our kids are younger and we're teaching them things for the first time, it's going to take a longer amount of time. And it feels like if I do this, it's wasting time when I could just do it myself and have it done. But I promise you, in the long run, it will save you tons of time to actually invest in teaching the skills while they're younger, so that when they are older, they can just jump in and do the things, and it happens even without you there or without you telling them to have it done. So there's the knowledge, what needs to be done, but there's also the skill, what the actual process of making it happen. And we had written down some notes about making cookies. Like, you can know that with flour, when you bake cookies, that you scoop the flour and you scrape off the top and then you add it to the thing. Like, that's a knowledge, but it's also a skill. It will take kids
You don't just
a
go
long
poof.
time to learn how to scoop and scrape without putting flour everywhere.
What was that one time somebody like blew on?
Like
It was even just trying to
powdered
like
sugar, I
something
think.
was hot and had a bunch of powdered sugar on it, and they blew, and it's just cloud of powdered sugar everywhere. So yes, there's knowledge, and then there's skills, and then there's habits of things like, okay, now I made a mess baking something. What am I going to do? I'm going to clean the kitchen until it's truly clean. And there's a whole different skill set needed for that. There's a different knowledge base needed for that. How do I know that it actually is fully clean? But I'll tell you, just as a closing example of the opportunities and how this adds life to your kids, it doesn't actually take away from them. Our daughter is a sought-after babysitter because of these skills. It isn't just because she went and got Red Cross CPR trained. It wasn't just because she's kind and tender-hearted or those kinds of things. It's because she has skills to bring structure to a home and create stability and safety for the kids. And she can make any meal. She can include them in making a meal. She will leave the home cleaner than the parents left it. She doesn't leave a mess that the parents have to clean up after they get home. We've had babysitters who left messes. We've had babysitters who left the home nicer than they came into it. And you guess which ones get hired for a second job. And so you can set your kids up for blessing, even financially, by simply giving them chores and then having the training and equipping conversations to go along with them. It's a gift you give your kids. It really, really is. So
super quick, I'm just going to hit those points again. Why we have our kids do chores. First of all, it teaches responsibility, personal responsibility, and ownership. Oh, I guess I don't have them very clear. Sorry, I was just going to hit the 3 points. You make a mess, you clean it up. If it belongs to you, take good care of it. That's if you're faithful with little, God gives you more. And it also teaches and trains them that when they're faithful with what belongs to someone else, then the Lord repays with things that belong to them. So,
yeah.
We're going to cover a whole bunch more on chores in the next couple of weeks.
And a lot more practical stuff.
And a lot more practical stuff. But thank you for joining with us today. And we pray that God blesses you on your parenting journey.
Yes.
Have a good one.